If you feel like your profit margin is not high enough, you have a revenue model problem. Period. End of story. I know, right? You're thinking of a million reasons why this does not apply to you. But if we sit here for a minute and we take the emotion out of this and we get real about what profit actually means, then you'll likely be able to admit to yourself that I'm right. Anyone who's coaching and running a sports training facility for any amount of time knows what it's like to see revenue continuing to go up, but it's that magical profit number, the one that suggests how much money you're putting away in your bank account, that after a while seems to either level out or worse yet, it somehow starts going down. Today, I want to talk about some of the obvious differences between top line revenue, that the numbers that everyone talks about, and more importantly, that profit number, and the not so obvious difference between how to approach these numbers. How should we be thinking about them, and what do they ultimately mean? If you don't know who I am, I'm Dave Bartek, and I've built and scaled Athletic Baseball, a 7-figure operation here in Atlanta, Georgia, where we run high-level training programs in an effort to maximize athletes' potential. Our goal is to figure out how to get them to the highest level of play that they can realistically achieve. Now I help other training facilities who are doing the same with their athletes, helping them build better businesses with more profitability and make their lives just a little bit easier in the process. The reality is, I know facility owners who are doing $40K, $50K, $100K a month and are stressed out of their minds. They're barely sleeping. At the end of the day, they're not really sure how much of this are they keeping, how much of this are they putting in their bank account or paying out. I also know some facility owners that are doing somewhere between 8 and 12K a month who are genuinely building actual wealth, putting money away in the bank, and they feel like they actually have a business. And this is all because of maximizing profit. The difference is not the top line revenue that everybody talks about. It's what they keep. We say revenue is vanity, profit is reality. And for most facility owners and good coaches, they're hardworking people, but they are optimizing for the wrong number. For a long time, I did exactly the same thing. Today, I'm going to break down exactly what separates the high profit facilities from the ones who are just staying busy. There's really 5 main drivers behind all this. There was a period where in our facility, I saw the revenue continuing to go up, and I still felt like I was just grinding away trying to stay afloat. Because revenue was going up, but the profit wasn't, and it wasn't keeping the same pace. And I think it's easy for all of you out there who are owning facilities to talk about all the variables that are involved between revenue and profit. And there's a lot of them. And these are, for lack of a better word, your expenses. And let's just assume that, we make a whole bunch of money and it's all going to be profit. That's what people think, right? And sometimes this can be true, but a lot of it boils down to how you set up your business model, your offers, how you're staffed, and how much wasted time and tasks are being done that are not put on efficient systems. And the turning point for me wasn't when we crossed some magical revenue milestone. We're still trying to grow that. But it was when I finally got serious about structuring our business, getting serious about our offer design and the pricing and how we were using our space, how we were staffed, in some cases, how we were not staffed. Digging into all this is when kind of that light bulb went off. And to me, it was like, okay, I'm never going to get rich in this business doing it the way I'm doing it. That was a reality moment. I knew I had to change something. If you're a facility owner who's tired of watching revenue continue to come in and wondering where the hell it all went, I want you to watch the rest of this video. Let me show you guys something simple real quick. And this is going to kind of change the way most owners think about this thing, okay? So I'm going to outline 3 different facilities right here. And the first one, we're going to call it Facility A. And Facility A, we're just going to throw some random numbers out there. Let's just say they're bringing in $20,000 a month in revenue. And let's say their profit margin is exactly 10%. You guys can do the math right there. That means they are gonna net, if I can type, $2,000 in profit, okay? And let's just go ahead and say that facility B, that's the second facility, they are doing the same amount of top line revenue with a 20% margin. And it's going to be hard for you guys to get to these margin percentages exactly because there's a lot that goes into it. But if you guys do the math there, you've got $4,000 in profit. Okay, that's more money being taken home with the same amount of money being made. And then let's take a look at facility C. This facility brings in a little bit less, okay? They're bringing in $15,000 a month in revenue. And let's say they profit 30% of what they bring in. If my math is right, you guys can correct me on this, that should be about $4,500 in take-home profit, okay? So this simple example right here shows you how facility C made, we'll just say brought in the least. Facility C kept the most. This is the reality. Facility A and Facility B are not failing. They're bringing in more money. But Facility C has done something a little bit different. They've built a machine that they know they can profit more on based on the amount that they're bringing in. So when they go ahead and scale this to $30,000 in revenue or $45,000 in revenue, then their goal should be to keep that profit margin somewhere in the same range, and they know their profit's gonna go up. By just driving the revenue number up, we get obsessed with the wrong number. We're chasing the wrong thing. So the question I want you to kind of walk away from this example with is, it's not how do I make more? It's how do I structure this thing so that I keep more of what I make? And those are two completely different problems with two completely different solutions. If you've got to here, you're probably thinking, okay, yes, let me hear this. I need this. Then good, you're ready for it. If you're listening right now and you're thinking to yourself, hey, this doesn't really apply to me, then you are either going to fail or you're going to make life really hard on yourself until you start taking a look at some of these things. Or maybe you're doing really damn well right now and both your business and your personal bank accounts reflect that. And if that's you, then bravo. This is the first main driver in this profit conversation, and that's offer structure. And this is the biggest lever that we pull on, and it's probably the biggest thing that owners are getting wrong. Everyone, and I mean everyone, athletes, parents, the normal society, all the industries think that more is better when we're talking about business. And for the context of what we are discussing here, I want you to wrap your head around this. Less is actually more. If your primary offer is individual lessons and they are billed by the hour, I want you to think about what that actually means as a business model. What you're actually doing is you're selling units of time, and you have a fixed number of hours in a week, and each coach does, which means your revenue has a hard ceiling and your profit is going to be whatever is left after and only after your costs come out of that capped number. That model works fine when you're a solo coach just getting started, and that's assuming that you don't have high overhead and a full facility in a building, but it does not scale profitably. It just doesn't, because every time you want to grow and scale, you have to have more hours. You have to have more coaches, and that margin is going to continue to grow with you. Those of you guys that have been listening to me talk about some of this stuff, or anyone else in this space for that matter, you know that the highest profit facilities have made a very different choice. That choice is that they've moved more towards some sort of recurring membership model, or more specifically, a structured program model where athletes are enrolled for a period of time, paying monthly or maybe paying in full with a clear outcome of what they're actually working toward. Here's exactly why this matters for profit specifically. When athletes are on a monthly program or they're paying in full for a program, your revenue becomes way more predictable. You can staff to it accurately. You stop under and overstaffing based on how many walk-ins you have, and oh crap, we had more lessons this week, so we need more coaches, and then they all go away. It's a predictable revenue that enables efficient operations that are actually what are gonna produce your profit margin. When you sell hours, your profit's capped by how many hours actually exist. And this was a real shift that we made at Athletic, our business. And it fundamentally changed the total financial forecasting and picture of our business. It's also one of the first things that I work through with our clients, because if your offer is not built right, then everything else after that gets harder. And I mean way harder. So once you've got a good offer in place, now you need some staff leverage, right? Without losing quality. This one's kind of a double-edged sword, and I want to talk about kind of both sides. So this is kind of that second driver that we're talking about, and that's how to staff this offer properly. If you are a solo operator, then every dollar you bring in is yours minus whatever those fixed costs that you have are. So on paper, that looks great. But you also have zero leverage, which means you're kind of the bottleneck on everything. Everything has to go through you to grow, and that growth is going to be capped by the hours you have, not only when you're working in the facility, but also at home. And when you're sick, you're on vacation, or you're burnt out, revenue is going to stop coming in because it has to flow through you. And some people are fine with this and can do fine on their own doing that. And I was too for a while, until I kind of wanted more, right? And the answer for that was building a team. But here's what a whole lot of facility owners kind of blow up when they start to do this and start looking at their margins. They hire too quickly before they're ready, and they start bringing on full-time coaches, and payroll goes up immediately, and they haven't built the offers out, and the revenue to cover it either hasn't arrived yet or it never really does, and that coach just wants more money, right? And I'm not exempt from this. I did the same exact thing. In the process, I had more guys disappear from our operation than have actually stuck around. But I learned some really good lessons in the meantime in doing this. The move that high profit facilities are making is a little bit smarter than that though. And what they're doing is they're hiring for delivery, and they're hiring to own the systems that they create, meaning they build out the methodology, the program design, the athlete development framework, the culture that goes along with it. And then you bring in staff to execute that. And your IP, your intellectual property, is the product, and then the coaches deliver that. And on the front end, before you're ready for full salaries, there are way smarter ways to structure all this stuff. And part-time coaches on a per rate basis can be a good fix for this to get things going. There's going to be specialists, pitching coaches, strength coaches, hitting coaches, and sometimes they're either on a revenue share or some sort of comp structure, if they are directly, and I mean directly, helping on the sales side and bringing in more revenue. These are arrangements that kind of let you expand your capacity and serve more athletes without the fixed cost commitment of a salary before they've actually earned that. I think the key questions to ask in this is this hire going to generate more revenue than they cost in the next 90 days? And if you can't answer yes with confidence to that, then you're not ready to hire that person. That's kind of the test, right? It's not complicated, but it keeps you pretty disciplined about, when and how you're going to add people to your organization. So, that staffing piece along with the offer is a very important driver. Number 3, and this is kind of the silent killer for facilities, space utilization. And it probably doesn't get talked about enough. And when it does, it's not approached properly. This is probably like the most actionable thing that you're going to get from this video. So kind of listen up here. Your rent is typically a fixed cost, right? You've got this amount per month and you've got this many athletes in here and this is how much each of them are paying. And the rest of the time when you don't have things operating, the cages are sitting empty, the weight room floor is sitting empty. And most people will just tell you that, hey, when the facility is not being occupied, you just need to get people in there, right? You just need to get teams in there. You just need to get people renting the space, run a membership model that doesn't require any coaches, and high profit facilities are going to obsess over this, and they're going to do some calculations on, what percentage of the time is the facility being used and when is it not. And, most owners, I guess, probably don't even calculate those numbers, but it is good to know. What I'll say is I would encourage you to do something a little bit differently if you are structuring offers and membership models where that is the mass of the revenue you're bringing in. Because if you have programs that are running and you know that you can predict how much revenue you're getting out of those programs or those membership models, then you also know how much opportunity there is to scale. How much room do you have in your facility? How much space is there to run those programs? And then what is the time duration, right? If kids are in school and you're running high school programs, then for 9 months out of the year, you're going to be capped in terms of what hours you can operate programs. Understanding the cap on how you positioned your offers in that business model is going to determine how you can actually do this properly. Once again, everybody says, hey, just get some teams in there renting the space. The problem with that is you don't have control over that sort of revenue coming in. You do have control over your programs and what you have operating. So yeah, you can do the cage rental thing. You can have 1099 coaches coming and doing their own thing. You can have teams coming in. But what you don't get a say in with that is how many of those people can you talk to, create a relationship with, and add them to your systems. And my recommendation is to start with your stuff first. If you have a high dollar offer, a high ticket offer, fill those up, spread those out, figure out how much you can get in your facility and staff them properly. Make sure your facility is known for that. The other stuff is fine, but it cannot take away from your high revenue specialty services. With that being said, that takes us to our fourth profit driver. And it goes along with what we just talked about a little bit. Get your pricing right. Yes, this helps with profit a lot. Pricing that actually reflects the value of what you offer to your athletes. And I'll be pretty direct right here. Underpricing is one of the most common margin problems that I see with facility owners, especially ones who have good offers. It's almost always driven by fear. Fear that the athletes will leave and go train somewhere else. Fear that the parents will push back a little bit on the price. Fear that being seen as expensive in the market is a problem. What owners do is they start lowering their prices or discounting, and then they start driving the volume up, and they end up with a full facility, but now that margin thins out, and they're forced to bring in other teams and other 1099s. And here's the thing, you can't out volume your way out of bad pricing. Your margin per athlete is too thin, then adding more athletes is just going to make yourself more work and for proportionally less return. So you end up a whole lot busier and you're not really meaningfully better off. That mindset shift that high profit operators have made with this is that they're not selling lessons, right? You're selling athlete development outcomes, and that comes with a higher value that parents will write a check for, because they believe in the result. So when you guys are going about setting up these offers and pitching these offers, quit calculating the per session rate. That's not what it's all about. There's a different value proposition with this, and it's going to command a fundamentally different pricing. The practical question that I want you to ask is, when did you last raise your prices? And if it's been more than 18 months and your facility is at or near capacity, there is almost certainly money that you're leaving on the table. Even just a 10% or 15% rate increase on a full facility is a significant margin, meaning you have athletes in there right now and they're all underpaying. You can raise your margin by quite a bit just raising prices and not really have to do any more work. Here's something to consider that we brought up with all of our high ticket programs. If nobody ever questions your pricing, then your pricing is too low. When your pricing is healthy, you're gonna get some people that are gonna push back. When you're on the edge right there, you're gonna get people that'll pay, but a lot of people will push back. And you hear, okay, man, that's pushing the threshold right there. We wanna be near that threshold. You wanna be the expert in your area. With that comes a higher price. Nobody ever said, oh man, I'm going to the best guy in town and he's charging the least. Profit driver number 5, backing up another step from price. We're gonna talk about the efficiency of marketing. And I'm like a broken record here, but this is a huge profit driver. Every single facility should know their cost per athlete. This is kind of where I wanna connect everything right here that we've talked about tonight. And we've talked about the marketing side and the advertising side before, but your marketing and advertising is like a cost center. You know, there's money that goes into it, and maybe there's athletes that come out. And sometimes it's hard to tell if that's working unless you're calculating this stuff. High profit facilities have totally flipped that, and they treat marketing as an investment with a measurable return because they're doing simple math and calculating everything. The reason some are able to do this is because they actually know their numbers. They know what their cost per lead is. They know how much does it cost to generate every single inquiry that we have. What's the cost per enrolled athlete? How much does it cost to turn every inquiry into a paying member? And what's the lifetime value of each athlete? And on the average, how much do athletes spend with you over time at your facility? That's something you should know. When you know those 3 numbers, then everything changes, and you can kind of look at a marketing channel and say with confidence, this is working, or maybe this isn't working. You can make rational decisions about how much you actually want to spend going forward. If you have something that is producing a high return, spend more on it, and there's no more guessing to that. The work I do with facility owners on the paid ad side through the athlete acquisition framework is built entirely around this. And we've built this system so that every single dollar that we put in has a predictable and measurable output. That is the only time when marketing is going to stop feeling like a gamble and it's going to start feeling like an actual lever that you can pull on. If you don't know what it costs to acquire an athlete, you don't have a marketing strategy, period. You have got to create a mindset and a culture of ownership where profitability is the constant driver in your building. There is nothing selfish about running a profitable facility. Profit is what keeps the lights on. Profit is what lets you hire better coaches and build better programs. Profit is what lets you be here in 5 years. Running a profitable facility isn't the opposite of your mission, it's what funds your mission. If you're sitting there and you're thinking about your offer structure, or how much space utilization you guys are using, or how long it's been since you raised your prices, that's not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with you. It's not like, oh man, I failed. Dave pointed out all these things wrong with what I'm doing. In fact, it's probably a good thing. It means that you care and you're honest about yourself and where you guys are at and what matters the most. The work I do with our partners is geared around all of this. We look at actual numbers and actual offers and actual marketing, and we build a real plan, a roadmap that is specific to your situation. If you're interested in what it takes to become a partner, there's a link below. You can check out what we do and apply to see if you're a fit. I'm a little bit selective about who I work with because I want to work with people and facility owners who are serious about building real facilities the right way. So if that's you, go check it out. If this was useful, drop a comment below and tell me which of these 5 drivers is the biggest gap in your facility right now. I read all the comments because I'm kind of genuinely curious what you guys have going on, and some of the comments can be kind of comical, actually. No judgment at all if you want to drop something that's a little out there. Subscribe if you want more of this. I put out content specifically for facility owners who are trying to build real businesses, not just survive the month. I'll see you on the next one.